Ag Tire Talks, Driving Yield Through Tire Technology, sponsored by Michelin Agriculture.
James Tushner here with Ag Tire Talk. I'm with Chris Neidert, Marketing Training Development Manager for Agricultural Tires for Trelleborg. Thank you for coming on the show.
James, hello to you. Always good speaking with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we've got some awesome products that we're going to talk about today, and specifically the TM1000 PT, which is the progressive traction. We're going to talk about the idiosyncrasy of that. But before we do, I just did the no-till conference, the National No-Till Conference up there in Louisville. Really enjoyed doing that classroom. And it was interesting, Chris, in the classroom, one of the guys is like, hey, I'm seeing all these Trelleborgs on all these new tractors. Like, who's Trelleborg?
Yeah.
So maybe we can open with that.
And James, that's great because Trelleborg, we're a large, huge global company, and we've got several divisions, but our group, we're called the Wheel Systems Group. We have many manufacturing facilities in Europe, but we're very proud of our two manufacturing facilities here in North America, Spartanburg, South Carolina, Charles City, Iowa. And besides agricultural tires, we build material handling, construction, and even motorcycle tires. But obviously, we're going to focus on the ag portion.
Well, let's talk about the branding just for a moment, because I don't think everyone understands your two-tier approach. So why don't you talk through the Trelleborg Mitas branding and your strategy for North America with the brands?
And I think some people know, but we purchased the Mitas business from a company called CGS several years ago, and that just enhanced our portfolio. So we position the Trelleborg as the ultra premium tire. As I tell everybody, we build some of the finest tires in the world. The Mitas brand comes in on the next tier, where it's I don't want to say a more price sensitive tire, but it is. But they're both OE level tires. Trelleborg has a lot of OE fitments. Mitas has, James, a lot of OE fitments that we're really proud of.
Yeah, I think I just noticed that on that the big deer combine they were showing at Farm Progress, that Mitas was a rear fitment on that. So yeah, and we're going to talk about the OE fitments. Okay, so good background on who Trelleborg is. So now we get into the TM1000, and it's PT. It's my understanding there's a difference between the TM1000 PT and just the TM1000. Why don't you just touch on that from a broad perspective as a starting point?
Well, James, and we do have two tires, similar names, but the PT and the TM1000 name stands for progressive traction. We have an innovative tread design. We're the only one in the industry that has this type of tread design. And what it is, it's an additional step off the main lug. And the first thing it does is just what the name implies, traction. A tire with our progressive traction has about 15 to 18% more traction than a tire without it. Also, the lug base is a wider. With that wider lug base, it reduces the tread squirm. So you get a nicer ride on the road and you get improved tire wear. And it also helps with an increased footprint, James, because footprint's one of the big things, as we know, in agriculture.
Yeah, and one of the things that struck me, it is a unique tread design. It is atypical from just a traditional standard R1W or R1 bar lug design. So I encourage all of our listeners just listening to go on the data book page where the Trelleborg data book is, or find the Trelleborg information online to take a look at it, because it is different. And I can see where that really wider lug at the base is going to reduce that tread squirm, which is always a good thing, especially when you're roading. So all good. Interesting look to that tire. All right, so let's talk through the sizes. At a first pass, you've got about 20 sizes. They're all VF. Why'd you choose all VF?
Well, VF, there's another nice subject, James, that we talk about a lot. And I'll bring in IF and VF, and those two concepts, how those evolved. Farmers years ago, they understood that if they got that footprint to get bigger, squat out, or get larger, they would reduce the soil compaction. I'm going to digress a minute to soil compaction. There's been some studies done that so obviously soil compaction, we're all going to agree that if you reduce soil compaction, you're going to improve the yield. So Penn State did a study that they showed the top portion of the ground for about the 8 to 12 inches. That's called the topsoil portion. And the thing that greatly influences compaction is ground pressure or contact pressure. Well, guess what influences the contact pressure? The tire footprint. So anything you can do to get it larger will help reduce that compaction. VF technology, VF stands for very high flexion. And what that enables the user to do, that enables the user to run less air pressure and still carry the load at that certain air pressure. So that's a big deal to farmers. And actually, VF lets you run up to 40% less air and still carry that same load.
So let's get down to brass tacks for a moment. So when it comes to the air pressures, right, a common air pressure for, say, standard row crop tires, 48, 80, 50s is about 25 PSI. Typical, right, 24 row planter or whatever you got, right?
Yes.
So with this VF, it's 40% less, which takes you down to 15. So really what I'm getting down to is, how does that impact? So are we talking about a 40% or so? It's almost a 1-to-1 ratio reduction in soil compaction? Or how would you explain that?
Yeah, some of those numbers you can't always say, if I take the air pressure down 40%, I'm going to reduce that footprint. What it does though, James, it makes that footprint not only wider, it makes it longer. And what happens there is it, again, continues to reduce that ground pressure. I'm not a student of exactly those percentages that you're saying, but at the end of the day, the big deal is the footprint gets larger, that contact pressure that affects that compaction gets dramatically reduced. And you just use 25 to 15, that 10 PSI is going to make a big difference on the footprint.
So really what you're saying is it really equates to pounds per square inch to the soil, right? So instead of 25 pounds per square inch, you're talking about 15.
Yeah, and actually what we actually measure the footprint in is square inches. So again, as that size changes and the footprints or the square inches gets higher, because the higher the square inches, that means there's more contact area. So that's what you're trying to achieve. And the VF tire, IF, I mentioned that a little earlier, that stands for improved flexion. And those were the first kind of technology that changed the tire world. And actually that deals with the sidewall strength. That's what lets the end users run less air pressure. So IF is improved flexion, and that's 20%. But pretty much, James, the market's going to VF because, again, I use the example, would you rather run 40% less air or 20% less air? And obviously, you know where that's going to go because we get that bigger footprint.
That's why you chose all VF for this line.
Yeah, so I think we'll see that market go towards that VF technology, James. The market's going to do that.
Sounds good. So really, at the end of the day, for a nice clean takeaway, what we're talking about is really not the footprint getting with VF with 40% less air pressure that much wider, maybe it's a little bit, but really what we're talking about is a dramatically, significantly longer footprint.
There you go, James. You've broke the code right there. Everybody wants to think it's wider. It's that elongation that, again, reduces that ground pressure. You see, I keep saying the same thing, but that's what we're dealing with. And again, I think the farmers all know this.
Awesome. All right, so let's talk through just an overview of the sizes. You've got some North America sizes that I'm very familiar with. You've got some of the row crop, the VF 480, 80, 50s, good mechanical front wheel drive. You've got some 710, 70 R42, but really what we're talking about today are some sizes that are not as typical. However, we're seeing more and more entrants with these particular size arrays with some of your more recent OE fitments. So why don't you run us through the three sizes that we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, the sizes we've just recently added, and we've rounded it out. The sizing offering is now 22 sizes, but the three sizes
Okay.
here, James, VF 965 R46. Now, where that is used is on the large horsepower tractors, the Fendt 1000 series, the Claas Xerion and Axion tractors, John Deere 9R, those huge, large horsepower tractors. Another size, VF 750 75 R46, another high horsepower tractor size, and VF 710 60 R38. Those two sizes there, the VF 710 60 38 and the 965 46, those would be a nice front and rear tire combination. But the fitments, James, would be the Fendt. You know, I call the Fendt the Lexus of tractors because they're the high horsepower tractors that if you're, you know, farming a lot of acres, these are the tractors that you're going to buy, those I mentioned right there.
Well, that's a good point that I want to bring up. So really what we're talking about here is two broad fitments. We're talking about mechanical front wheel drive, high horsepower, 350, 400 horsepower stuff. We're also talking about the full wheel drive arenas as well, right? So really two, but all catering toward the more large agricultural fitments with this TM1000 progressive traction.
Yes, you're exactly correct, James. That's where Trelleborg shines in the high horsepower arena because there's not very many manufacturers making these sizes, James. So we're in an elite group right here with those tractor manufacturers.
Awesome. So let's just talk about the tractor fitments for a bit. So you mentioned Fendt 1000 series, which is the MFWDs, similar to a Deere 8R. So are these actual OE fitments that are happening right now?
Yes, and I'll hang on the Fendt a while. You know, we have a tremendous relationship with AGCO, which builds the Fendt tractor. These are built in Germany, and we are on some of those the standard fitments. So when you go in to order a tractor, you'll see the Trelleborg brand come up, being able to order. So we're really proud of that, James. Very nice. That's
hence why that I keep hearing about it. The no-till. There's a lot of Fendt guys out there that at this particular conference. Good. So so you've got OEs on Fendt, a number of OE fitments on the larger Fendts. You've got a number of OE fitments on the larger Claases as well. Was there some Deere in there as well?
Yeah, the Deere 9Rs, some of those, again, that's the big high horsepower John Deere tractors that we have some placement as well. Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so we talked through the tractor piece, super exciting with this line. Now you also have some sprayer option for flotation as well. I see a 650 65 R38 offering. So are you catering toward like an R40 38 fitment as well?
Yes, James. So you know the sprayer business is getting specialized. The users will run what we call the flotation tires coming up in spring planting, so they get that flotation. The 650 65 38 is probably the most popular sprayer size. Now let me say a thing about our VF 710 60 38.
Okay.
What that does, James, that is the same height as a 650 65.
Oh, interesting.
But the 710 gets you a little wider footprint. So, you know, a lot of times you have to keep the specifications similar because they have to fit into the vehicle. They got to go under the fender wells. So that our 710 60 38, again, similar in diameter, rolling circumference to that 650. But those two, James, you cover a lot of the sprayer market with those two sizes. You're exactly correct. But the 650 probably is the most popular.
It is. So I just want to be clear because that's a big, nice, clean takeaway. So what you're saying is an R40 38 typically will have a 650 65 38 flotation option out in the marketplace. But what you're saying is you can actually, obviously we want to check with your tire dealer first, make sure the clearances, everything works, right? We always say get the sign off first before you do anything. Yes. But what you're saying is that 710 60 38 can actually go in lieu of the 650 65 38 and give you a little bit wider footprint.
Yes. If you stood those two tires up next to each other, they would be almost the exact same height.
That's exciting.
What you just said.
I didn't realize that.
we go to our wider comment there, James, and you know what that means? Less ground pressure.
Man, I tell you what, the combo of that, the VF plus the wider section width by another 60 millimeters, I mean, that's awesome for the sprayer guys. So glad we covered that. Good, good. Okay, so let's get on to your speed ratings. You know, D's been around fine. These are dual stamp DE. Why don't you give us a little color as to why you did that?
Yeah, and these load indexes, James, that we're using on these are high. You know, again, the manufacturers continue to build bigger machines, so we have to respond with the tire. But you bring up a good point there. You know, these VF tires, I'm going to say, have 2 load indexes and 2 speed ratings. And if we just use the 965/46 as an example, this is a 193D. So they'll give you a little nomenclature refresher here. The 193 is the load index that dictates how much weight the tire can carry at a certain air pressure. The D is a 40-mile-an-hour tire, so you could comfortably drive that tire at 40. Now the dual marking is it's a 190 E. So what happens, and this is what we talk about all the time, the E is a 43-mile-an-hour speed now. So what you can do, you can drive the tire faster, but now as what happens with any kind of situation, when you go faster, the load limit gets reduced. When you go slower, your load capacity increases. So right here, we have a 193D or a 190E. So again, the faster you drive, you're able to carry a little less weight. So you have to pay attention to that off the load table. But that's a good point there, James.
So clean takeaway. So when you're increasing speed, you can't carry quite as much load.
Correct. At the same air pressure. Again, we have to make a little baseline there, but yes, you are correct.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So let's talk about the load tables. You know, one of the things that I've noticed about these load tables, VF, oftentimes they're just one speed, but these are multiple speeds. Why don't you talk through that?
You know, once again, Trelleborg, we try to be at the forefront of technology, and we've done it now with load tables because James, you brought that up. I don't want to say the old, but the early entries of the VF market, we had one speed. So it didn't matter whether you're going 5 miles an hour or 40, it would be the same air pressure and load. Well, we need to get a little more refined with that because you really need to pay attention to the speed that you're going. Again, when you go slower, you're able to carry more weight. So our load tables now, James, and thank you again for bringing that up, our load tables go down to 5 miles an hour. So as an example, I go back to my VF 965/46. It goes from 5 miles an hour all the way up to 43 miles an hour. So you're covered. You can dial in that air pressure correctly. So you get the maximum footprint size, which gives you the best, lowest compaction, the best traction, the best wear, and the best ride. And that's really what you want to do. You're spending a lot of money on these tires. You want to really do whatever you can to get them to last. Our tires last anyhow, but they running the correct air pressure is paramount.
Well, and the other piece too is, did you not do this? Go and do the multiple speed load table because the CTIS, Central Tire Inflation System's coming on board across the marketplace?
You know, again, from being a tire guy, we always would love the user to run one air pressure in the field and run another pressure on the road, because again, if you look at load tables, you want to the optimum tire wear use performance will let you vary the air pressure. And you're exactly right, James, with the Central Tire Inflation System, lets you, because that's what we would love. We would love for you to be able to vary that. And you're right, James. Thank you for bringing that up.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can get from the mid 20s all the way down to single digits. If you got CTIS plus the more innovative VF tables, I mean, you can get way down there in the mid single digits.
Oh, no. And again, you dial it right in. And again, you really only got to remember maybe 2 pressures, one for the field, one for the road. And you're right, James. Dial it down. And again, you're ready to go.
Very good. Well, that's a great synopsis on the TM1000 PT, by the way, the progressive traction, because the PT being the VF version of that. Any closing thoughts on this highly technical tire?
No, James, you know what else I would just say, we have a really good website, and I'll say our website address. It's www.trelleborg.com/en-us/wheels. I realize that was a lot, a lot there, but our website has just a tremendous amount of information. You can get to the data book with the load tables from here, and a lot of information right there, James.
Well, with one of the highly technical tires, it's important to get the load tables. And that's one other big clean takeaway. You always have to double check with the tire dealer, but really it's more and more important to have all of the robust information at your fingertips as we continue to move forward. I'll close with this. Thanks for coming on the show with this particular product offering. Certainly fits the driving yield through tire technology piece, all the way from the sophisticated load tables, all the way to all VF, all the way to VF, all the way to the progressive traction, innovative lug design. So appreciate you doing that. Looking forward to the next one and what you've got up your sleeve for the next time around.
James, always, as I say, it's always good having cerebral discussion with you, and we're always happy to talk about Trelleborg and Mitas products. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.